What's up, everyone? It is that time of year again. It's time for my top 10 favorite albums of 2023. Emphasis on the word favorite. I still see it every year. Everybody putting out all these lists and they use the word best. And I'm just like, stop. But as usual, I'm here to give you what I believe is going to be the most honest top 10 that you're going to see anywhere out there. Now, this year's been crazy because there have been a ton of killer albums that have come out. So much so that earlier in the year, it got kind of stressful thinking about making this video. But even though it did hurt my heart to leave out some albums, I think I've whittled it down to a top 10 that represents me and what I've really been listening to and enjoying and what has really connected with me this year. So let's get into it. My number 10, from St. Louis, Missouri, The Gorge with Mechanical Fiction. This is The Gorge's third album, I believe, and they are mathy technical prog metal. Now, it's kind of well known to the people that watch my shit that I'm not super into prog metal or prog in general, but this is not that kind of thing. Instead of prog, where it seems like they're obsessed with like science fiction or fantasy or some sort of shit like that, this is the kind of like, it's like aggressive metal for people who are obsessed with solving really complicated math equations. And it's fucking heavy. Riff after riff, and each riff has that thing where you go, what the fuck kind of time signature is this? But the band are tight as fuck, and it's just a super solid album from a band that I did not even know before this album came out. There are a couple albums on my list that I just randomly saw a clip pop up somewhere on the internet. And I went, whoa, what the fuck is this? And one of those was The Gorge, and the album absolutely delivers. If you're into a technical, mathy, hardcore, the first Dillinger Escape Plan album, only way more mathy, I guess. And I guess more progressive. Fuck, I don't know. The Gorge, just go check it out. The Gorge, Mechanical Fiction. My number 9, a band hailing from Massachusetts, Fuming Mouth, with their new album, Last Day of Sun. And this is their second full-length album, and it is a motherfucker. I had the pleasure of interviewing vocalist, guitarist, songwriter Mark Whelan a couple months ago, right before the album came out. It was a really nice conversation, and I got to know kind of where his head is when he writes these particular songs, because this is music that, to my ears, has very little to do with death metal, but he, in his brain, the music that's coming out of him is death metal. There are death metal elements a la Entombed and bands like that, but there's also plenty of stuff on here that would please fans of Converge or Unsane, and that's why I like this. To me, it's kind of like hardcore metal mixed with death and noise rock all at the same time. It's very aggressive, but it's also very emotional. For those of you who don't know, Mark Whelan was diagnosed with cancer a couple years back, and he ended up beating the cancer. And this album was kind of what was being written when all of that was going on. And I know that if you really look into it, there's a concept that maybe isn't necessarily related to his illness, but you can't take that out of it. The lyrics and the music, you feel it. And I think that's probably why this album has more weight to it than I think it would normally have had. But yeah, it is a great progression from where the band were on their last album, and it's just heavy as fuck. So if that does anything for you, check out Fuming Mouth. Number 8, this is another one that just randomly popped up on the internet, and I immediately got very into them. The band is Somnuri. The album is Desiderium, and I believe this is their third album. They're a band from Brooklyn, New York, and this album is a little bit hard to pin down without just directly comparing it to bands. Fans of Mastodon would be into this. There's a little bit of Soundgarden-ish, sometimes on the vocals, but it's got that vibe where it is metal, but there's like an alternative tinge to it. But this thing has a lot of fucking heavy riffs on it, but also it has a lot of hooks to it too. And I think that's probably why it really connects with me, because I am the metal fan that's always like, where's the fucking song? And these are just killer, heavy, melodic pieces of music, all just shoved into one album from a band that I just recently discovered, but now I'm a huge fan, Somnuri. Number 7, another band from St. Louis, Missouri, The Lion's Daughter, with their 5th, I think, album, Bathhouse. And it kind of sounds like this. This is a band that's been on my radar for a while. I got really into them in 2016 with their album Existence is Horror. And since then, I've watched this band grow, because at that point, it was almost just like a sludgy black metal kind of thing. And little by little, they've added these different elements. All of a sudden, the keyboards came in and it started to sound a little more like a horror movie soundtrack. But with Bathhouse, I feel like they've finally gotten to this point where they are uncomparable to, I think, anything else except for themselves. Because they have the black metal elements still, the sludgy elements still, they have the synthesizers, but now there's a new sort of melodic hooky characteristic that's been added to some of the songs, and that just it ties everything together so well. This album is just so well done, and they're a band that every single time they put out an album, I'm like, God, this is fucking cool. And I do not hear enough people talking about The Lion's Daughter. They are fucking killer, and they're only getting more fucking killer with every album. So yeah, number 7, Lion's Daughter, Bathhouse. My number 6, Till the Dirt, Outside the Spiral, the debut of the new project from Kelly Shaefer, who was the mastermind pretty much behind Atheist, one of my favorite extreme metal bands of all time. And while Atheist are still going, and apparently we are going to get more Atheist music, this is a different sort of side of Kelly Shaefer. It's still very heavy and chaotic and pushing boundaries like you can't even imagine, but it almost sneakily incorporates different elements of things that you could equate to like grunge or straightforward rock music. Sometimes it's just sort of a section or buried in there, but this is kind of an album that, aside from calling it metal, I really don't know where to put it. It's proggy. That doesn't sound right. It has elements that are related to death metal. That doesn't sound right either. It's just an album that seems to pull from all these different areas, but then puts it together into these cohesive pieces of music that are just till the dirt from the crazy mind of Kelly Shaefer. I also got to speak to Kelly Shaefer several months back, right before this album came out, and that was an amazing conversation. I'll put links to these interviews in the video description. But Kelly Shaefer is a great example of sometimes you meet your heroes and they're fucking cool as shit. And it helps that they're continuing to put out amazing music. So, till the dirt. I didn't even mention that Scott Burns came out of retirement to produce that album. Yeah, that too.
Showing all of their day, regenerate ashes with this complete elite. Destruction, detonation,
all right, for my number 5, we're pulling into my home state of Texas, Dallas, Texas to be exact. Creeping Death, Boundless Domain. This is Creeping Death's second full-length album, and it's fucking great. It's old school death metal done through a younger lens. And there were so many fucking good death metal albums that came out this year that I had to really wrap my head around what is it that connects with me about some particular death metal bands. And there are other bands that are way more technical than Creeping Death, but what they're doing on this, it just feels good. It's odd to say that about a death metal album, but these guys are easily one of the best younger death metal bands going today, of which there are a lot. But this album is just, you like death metal? There you go. Creeping Death. Number 4, here we are back in Dallas, Texas with Frozen Soul, Glacial Domination. So, honestly, this album and the Creeping Death album are so close together, they kept switching places in the ranking because in certain ways they have a similar thing going on. It's the old school death metal, or cold school in their case, but it's just straightforward death metal with a great groove, great vocals, great riffs, and the production on this album and the Creeping Death album, they're just so classy. They're not trying to make it sound like it's from somewhere in the 80s. It has a modern quality to it, but for somebody like me that just likes that real meat and potatoes death metal sound, Frozen Soul, Creeping Death, they are doing some of the best shit going these days. And I like how on the Frozen Soul album they've added the element of the synthesizers, which on this I think some of it's done by the electronic artist Ghost, G-O-S-T. I always say Ghost, so everybody knows what I'm talking about. But I did that. It goes very well with the whole freezing ice cold kind of thing. That it's very rare that a band comes out and they just have a whole aura around them and they're just so good at doing it. And it's Frozen Soul, Glacial Domination. Number 3, Filth is Eternal, Find Out. Now we're into the real shit because this is the album I think I've probably listened to the most this year, mostly because it's only 30 minutes long, but also because it speaks directly to my 90s metal / alternative kid that I was when I was a teenager. This is the kind of album that he would have been all over. And guess what? I haven't changed much. This album has hardcore elements, it has grunge elements, it has alternative rock elements, all done in such an amazing way. It's urgent, it's entertaining, it's hooky, it stays in your fucking brain for weeks afterward. And this is Filth is Eternal's second album, technically their third, because prior to this, the band was called Fucked and Bound, but they changed their name and their sound has evolved a little bit, where it still has the hardcore edge to it, but there's something so organically cool about this album. I recently, very recently, interviewed Angelo from this band, and we had an amazing conversation, like an hour and a half long interview I did. So go check that out. I'll put that down in the link as well. But this is another one of those bands where I just randomly saw a part of a video online and instantly became a fan. And this is easily the best discovery of the year for me. Filth is Eternal, Find Out. Number 2, Jason Bieler and the Baron von Bielski Orchestra, Postcards from the Asylum. This is an amazing album. This is probably the album I've listened to the second most, but this is the opposite, where this album is really fucking long. But the great thing about it is I wouldn't know what fucking song to cut from it. Every song is so amazingly well written. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, Jason Bieler in the 90s was in a band called Saigon Kick, a very underrated band in my opinion. He was the primary songwriter, and then for the last couple albums, the primary vocalist as well, but he plays most of the instruments on this and produces it himself in his own studio, sending tracks off to have his buddies do little guest spots here and there. And what he does is just fucking gorgeous. It's got everything from really beautiful ballads to whacked out proggy mind fucks to really heavy anthemic kind of songs, and everything in between and in and out and surrounding and all over the place. But the common thread that keeps everything together, aside from Jason Bieler's vocals, is the fact that every song is so amazingly well written. This is the second album he's done under the Von Bielski moniker, but he's already working on more shit. I think he's already put out 2 more singles since this album came out. Dude is a busy man. But please, please, please don't slow down. Don't stop. Because if you continue to do shit like this, the world is a much better place. Jason Bieler and the Baron von Bielski Orchestra.
Staring into black light, dominated birthright. Breath of man, leaching through, spinning to. Breath of man, catching to, point of view. Breath of man, violence, inheritance. Breath of man, drama porn, feeding on 72 seasons gone.
My number 1 album, to absolutely nobody's surprise, 72 Seasons from Metallica. In case you're new, Metallica is my favorite band of all time. Yes, I even love Saint Anger. And just in case you ask, yes, I also love Lulu. So of course Metallica puts out a new album and I'm going to be all over it. And honestly, this exceeded my expectations. To me, it's not as strong as Death Magnetic, but it's a huge improvement for me over Hardwired to Self-Destruct. If you want to hear me talk in depth about this album, Eddie Sparks and I did an entire episode. an hour plus us reviewing this album. But really, I don't think I'm going to change anybody's minds. If you know, you've probably heard a song or two and you've made up your mind about it, and that's perfectly fine. But all of you out there, I know you have at least that one band, if not more, that the sound of them playing together just does something for you. And it just makes everything in the world seem okay when they're playing. And Metallica is that band for me. And on top of that, some of these songs, to me, just get better the more I listen to them. I'm one of those people that loves when they're hanging out in that middle ground right between thrash metal and fucking regular ass rock and roll. The very same reason a lot of people don't like them at all. But I love them, and it's my number one album of the year, 72 Seasons from Metallica. All right, that's it. But before I let you go, last year, if you remember, after I did my top 10 of the year, I went back and revisited my top 5 for 10 years prior. Now, unfortunately, the top 10 that I posted somewhere online 10 years ago has vanished. I was not able to find it, but I 100% remember what my favorite album 10 years ago in 2013 was, and it was this album, Sky Burial from Enter Arma. Was this their debut album? I think they did like a mini album or an EP before this, but I think this was their debut full length. They're due for another album. I mean, all their shit's good, but this is easily my favorite. Some albums from my past I'll put on and go, yeah, I think I can see why I liked it at the time. But this is one that I put on and I'm still just like, oh, fuck yeah, man. So yeah, 10 years in the past, Old Head also had some pretty fucking great taste. All right, that wraps it up. My top 10 favorite albums of 2023. As usual, feel free to post your top 10 in the comments below. And as always, I greatly appreciate everybody watching my shit, even for a little bit. In just a couple weeks, we're coming up on the 5th anniversary of the Old Head channel. So that means we're rolling into year 6, and I got a lot of shit planned. I don't plan on stopping, so hopefully you don't plan on stopping watching. All right, that's it. I hope everybody has a fantastic new year, and I wish everybody an amazing 2024. Hopefully, we all get the most amazing year ever. Let's find out together, shall we? All right, I'll see you all again very soon.